Let's start off with why you're here. Uh, First, you're probably a student in Philosophy 160 or Philosophy 320 or any of the other philosophy courses in the course catalog. Um, and it's paper writing time, and maybe you've run into a dead end. Maybe you're interested in a philosophical topic for your class, but you're not exactly sure where you should go from there. Your philosophy professor has given you a topic you have to write about, but you're not comfortable with the material, you don't understand it. Third, your topic is open-ended, but you're just not sure where to begin. And finally, maybe you're actually already comfortable with writing philosophical papers, but you just want to know how to improve a little bit. Well, if you're any of these, you're in the right place. Okay. Let's face it, I mean, writing a paper in philosophy can be a difficult task. Philosophy texts are very unusual, very unlike a lot of the other subjects that we're going to tackle in college. So we're going to try and help you out today. This seminar is called Writing a Paper in Philosophy. My name is Sean Winkler, and I'm going to help you out. Let's talk about how this presentation is going to work. Okay. First, we're going to talk about where to begin. Okay. Writing a philosophy paper doesn't just start with putting pen to paper. Okay. You have to be preparing for it all along the semester during your coursework. Okay. So we're going to talk about how to properly read a philosophical text, how to study right, how to make use of secondary sources, and how to brainstorm. So when it comes to paper time, you know some topics that maybe interest you, and you have a general idea of what's going on in the class. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about how to develop a thesis statement. Okay. A thesis statement is the central component of your paper. It's the most important part of it. First, you have to pick a topic. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how to ask the right questions about that topic, and then ultimately formulate reasons that support your assertion about that topic. Next, we're actually going to talk about the writing of the paper. Okay? Your paper needs to consist of about 2 to 3 arguments, a counter argument. It needs to be properly structured and organized so it's easy to follow. It needs to have some good style so people are interested in it so it doesn't sound boring. And finally, it needs to be edited properly, okay, so it's polished and it looks professional. And last, we're going to talk about how to cite philosophical papers properly. Philosophy, for the most part, makes use of Chicago Manual of Style citation method as opposed to APA or MLA. And so we're going to talk about where to find that, and then also how to quote and paraphrase properly in a philosophy paper. So let's first talk about getting started. Okay, getting started with writing a philosophical paper is oftentimes one of the most difficult parts of it. It can be very frustrating, as you can see with our very angry student on the right-hand part of the screen. Okay, but as I mentioned before, writing a philosophical paper does not just begin with a spontaneous, session of just sitting down and putting pen to paper. Okay, you have to be prepared. You have to have been studying the course material. You have to have been reading along the way, so you have a general grasp of what's going on with the material before you go into to make assertions and write about it. Okay, one of the key ways to stay on top of this is to read the text. Okay. You need to read the text at least twice. Okay, the reason is that philosophical texts are very dense. They're very abstract, but they can be very rich, and there's a lot of material. There's a lot of information that's going on within that text. Now, don't get me wrong. I know we all want to avoid the text, because it can be sometimes maybe you might find it boring. Maybe philosophy is not your thing, but do your best to try and dig in, get that information straight from the philosopher's mouth themselves. Okay. Now, because that can be, very difficult, you need to take good lecture notes, and you need to study your lecture notes. Okay, your philosophy professor is doing the best that they can to take the very dense, very complex philosophical prose and sort of translate them into more relatable, communicable language. Okay, they're trying to fill it up with examples and stuff like that. Okay, and that's going to help you to connect with the information a little bit more. Next, you need to consult secondary sources. Okay, you need to like how your professor is doing. Other philosophy professors and other philosophical thinkers are sort of trying to interpret much more complicated texts and to make them more relatable so people can understand them. Now, some of the sources that are listed here below: Cambridge Companions, Routledge, the Stanford Encyclopedia, Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. These are available through the library, and these specifically are not sources that you want to cite per se. But they are as they say up there, they're encyclopedias, and they can give you a good general understanding before you go to sort of do your more thorough research. Okay. Next, as intimidating as it might be, don't be afraid to visit your professor during office hours. Okay. They won't bite. They're here to help you out. Okay. And sometimes, maybe what will help make an office hour session a little less intimidating and maybe a lot more productive is coming prepared with a few questions. It's very tempting, especially if we're having a tough time understanding the material, to just say, I just don't get it. But you want to come with like 2 or 3 basic questions that can lead into a good conversation with your professor, and I guarantee that you'll find it'll be a lot. You'll get a lot out of it. Next, working together with other students in your class. I guarantee that you're not the only one who's having a tough time with it. Okay, so assemble study groups and talk about the information. You'll find that sort of saying it out loud can simplify these ideas a lot more. Next, on your own time, when you're reading your lecture notes, reading through the text, you want to brainstorm. You want to free write a little bit. Okay, you want to sort of try and express that you want to express those philosophical ideas in your own language, because that's the easiest way to understand it. And finally, don't forget the ARC. Okay, we're a tutoring center. We have undergraduate and graduate philosophy students. We're always here to help.